Okay, so now that we got through that, after the wood stove's installed, I want to also install something called a TEG, T-E-G, thermal electric generator. Now, high-tech guy Stu is graciously enough, I'm able to bounce ideas off of him. He's able to give ideas to me, suggestions. He knows his electronics backwards and forwards like the back of his hand. Okay? So I don't. I'm all DIY. I'm rookie. I haven't burned the place down yet. Everything's running safely. I think I did an okay job, right? So the thermal electric generator, guys, is something really cool, and I don't see a lot of people doing this. But when the wood stove goes in, the top of it will be occupied by, I'm going to have one of those little fans that sit on the fireplace and blow air. And I'm going to also put a kettle on there for cooking stuff. Now, the sides of the fireplace, I'm going to take full advantage of the fireplace and make it super efficient. The thermoelectric generators, what they do is, the heat that's generated by the fireplace goes into these generators and creates electricity, as long as you keep the thermoelectric generators cooled at the same time. So, by doing a thermoelectric generator system, first, when I'm burning a wood stove and it's nighttime, I'm making power via the wood burning. I'm heating the house, and I'm pretty much unlimited power, right? Set to some degree. I can't be running air conditioners and stuff like that, though. Unlimited for what I have, basically. The thermoelectric generator needs to be cooled. Okay? So, if you guys ever seen boiler systems or RADs in Europe, if you know what that is, to keep the thermoelectric generators cool, they have a kit that has a little controller and a built-in pump, circulation pump. So what it does is, you run a loop around your tiny house or whatever you have, and it's filled with some type of water glycol mix. That way it doesn't freeze. And what that does is, when the pump's on, it's moving that heat away from the thermoelectric generators, and you can plumb it wherever you want. So thus, you've just turned your wood stove into a boiler system that creates electricity and also heats your house and heats anything you plumb this pipe to. So, I'm going to be plumbing the thermoelectric generators way over to the battery bank to keep them nice and toasty. Going to plumb it to the aquarium for my aquaponics so the fish are happy. Also going to plumb it to my water storage tanks so the water never freezes and acts like a thermal storage battery, putting heat into the water. And I can also put it in a rad or wherever. Now, in order to keep the water inside that tubing cool, I also have to run it underneath the tiny house. Running it underneath the entire floor in a closed loop system, so it dumps the rest of the heat off that the fireplace produces and brings in cold winter temperature water back into the thermoelectric generators to keep them nice and cool and keep transferring the heat as the fireplace burns. Now the fireplace that I'm getting, Cubic Mini Grizzly model, is fairly small. It burns for 3 to 4 hours max if you know what you're doing. So 4 hours of extra power whenever you throw a wood stove on is pretty awesome. Obviously, the controller for the thermoelectric generators are set, so they will put all the power into the circulation pump for your closed loop system before it goes into your batteries or any other devices, which makes 100% sense. Because if you don't have that pump moving, the heat is not transferring away from the thermoelectric generators fast enough, and you'll run into issues. So it's probably going to be a good idea that I have multiple pumps as backups, but that's not a big deal. So by doing this, guys, think of this. Let's say a 3-hour burn in the wood stove is going to cook me out of the tiny house, pretty much. It's going to also dry the tiny house out. You guys know that I have a humidity problem to some degree. Once the wood stove goes in, humidity problem goes away. And then I can start putting a kettle full of water on top of the wood stove and then add humidity. Not only that, I'm going to be able to make electricity off the wood stove. I'm going to be able to heat everything and everywhere that I want to plumb the closed loop boiler system, basically. That runs entirely off the grid. And it will also feed my battery banks power during nighttime, during blizzards, during whatever, during storms. I will be set no matter what. Awesome, awesome stuff. So I'll be saving up for that. That's the second part I'll be saving up for. Okay, number 3 is eave trough water collection, rainwater collection on the tiny house. This is something I didn't think was possible, and it got me really down when I found out about the height restrictions for the tiny house. So after being in the tiny house during rainstorms, being outside the tiny house in rain, you get to see where the water flows naturally. On the sides of the tiny house, on the roof, where it all goes. The tiny house has a flat roof, but it's in such a way where it's kind of like this. It's flat, but it's kind of curved towards the outside. Okay, just a nice gradual curve all the way. So now, this side of the tiny house here, where the entrance door is, and where the wind turbine is going to go back there, there's issues. So there's a lot of stuff that will screw up an eave trough system on this side of the tiny house. So on this side, however, it's pretty nice. So once I get all my solar panel work done, wood stove work done, we'll get on to water procurement, rainwater harvesting, and all that fun stuff. So I want a 48-foot long eave trough to run the complete length of the tiny house on this side. It will be about the height of my ceiling, but on the opposite outside, right? It's going to be outside. Screwed into the tiny house. I have gutter guard already bought. I already have the first flush system. And the first flush system, guys, and before I get to the first flush, the gutter system will be just below where the roof was put on the tiny house. Now, since it's a transport trailer, it's an aluminum capped roof. Okay, so there's a little, I'm gonna say 6-inch area where the roof comes off, there's a drip edge, and then it goes down the sides of the tiny house. But underneath the drip edge, there's like a bunch of folds and weird how they fasten it to the tiny house. Under that, I want the eave trough to go. The whole length, 48 feet long. I will have one, I'm guessing only one, exit port from that. Yeah, one exit port should be plenty from the eave trough. And hopefully I will put it back there. Now, when I do that, the water is going to come into something called a first flush system. If you guys don't know what it is, look it up online. I already bought mine. And however, mine, since I'm in Canada, will be indoors. And people are going to say, what? What are you putting it indoors for? Well, Canada, wintertime, water freezes. Yeah. And then some people are going to say, well, didn't you just mention something about a boiler system and you could run the pipes over to possibly to the first flush system? Yeah, maybe. But I'd rather have the first flush system inside. It will be warm. It's going to absorb the heat from inside the tiny house and transfer it out anyway. Through it's plastic material. I may have to insulate it. I don't want condensing happening and water everywhere on the floor, but whatever. But anyway, the system basically does. It takes water from a rain and it goes into this first flush system. And depending on how long you make the height of this thing, which I can't make it very long because of the setup that I have. But once it does that, the first flush system, once the first rain starts and washes for a good half hour, 20 minutes, it takes all the first wash off of your tiny house and out of the gutters and down into this first flush system. So it gets all the crap off your roof first. And if it continues to rain beyond that, then the first flush system has a little ball in it, floats up via gravity, water pushing it up because it's got air in it, so it's got to go up. It's going to follow buoyancy. And then what that does is, once it fills up a certain height in the first flush system, it plugs it off, and then water can now flow down into the tiny house. And from there, I'm going to have to build a DIY filter system out of a black Berkey filter, and that will ensure any bird crap and other particles and crap get stopped at the Berkey before entering my large IBC tote storage tanks. So once that's done, things are going to be looking good, because that means I will be able to produce water every time Mother Nature just says, hey, you're getting a drink. So that is the goal, guys. If we can get all this stuff done, hopefully by next year, which I highly doubt unless you guys are generous to me online, it's not going to happen over a 1 year period. It may happen over a few more years period. But the tiny house is getting closer and closer on a deep, tight budget, powered by you guys online.